Well, hello everybody. This is Blaine French again here with class number 2, the UNL Livestock Judging Online Judging Series. This is going to be a class of Angus Heifers, really high quality class, and I think you want to take good notes on this one because I think this will be a good class for you guys to talk reasons on after you evaluate. So again, we're going to do the same as we've been doing with the first video. I'm going to go through each animal individually. There will be a slide with all 4 heifers on there. That way you can come to a placing. You'll want to pause the video at that time, get you a good placing, and then we'll critique the class and talk about it a little more at the end. So we start with heifer number 1. Here is heifer number 1. Here's heifer number 2. And again, make sure to pause the video throughout these, going through here individually. I really encourage you guys to look at the animal individually first. That way you can get a good idea of what you think about them, and you can make some decisions from there on. Again, heifer number 2. Heifer number 3. And heifer number 4. All right, here is your slide of all 4 of the heifers. So again, this will be the time for you to pause the video, go back, look at those females individually, and then you'll be able to come to a placing hopefully at this point. Then we'll take some time to critique these and go through them individually. Again, 1's in the top left, 2's right beside her on the right, 3 in the bottom left, then 4, of course, is there on the bottom right. Okay, so let's go back to heifer number 1. We'll start critiquing this class. Again, I want you guys to think about buzzwords and what comes to your mind first when you evaluate these livestock, really regardless of species. I think the first thing that you notice about this one and the first thing that would come to mind for me to say about this particular female is brood cow. She is obviously very maternal, big-bodied, bold through the center portion of her skeleton. You have to appreciate that. She's got a really cowy, maternal appearance about her. I think she's one that really combines that with a ton of stoutness and power there at the surface. She's a big-footed, stout-boned female, and I think if we could get behind the cattle, we'd see that she's pretty stout pin, has a lot of shape to her lower quarter and stifle. Again, really broody, good-bodied, and a lot of power and mass in this particular heifer, no doubt about it. Now, from a structural standpoint, if we just study her angles, if we read her from the top side of her shoulder down to the point of her shoulder, I think she's good in her shoulder angle up front. I think she has a nice set to her rear leg. Looks like she's good in the set to her pasterns and her foot. So structure, I think, is pretty good on her. So if we talk about functionality, and that's what comes first in these breeding females, I think she certainly covers the basics of having a good body type, a sound structural base, no doubt about it. Now, if we wanted to get picky on this particular heifer, while I do think she is plenty elegant out of the top side of her shoulder, you could probably, to make her perfect, lengthen her out just a touch, maybe clean her throat up a little bit and make her a little better in her chest floor, but that's getting awfully picky on a really nice female, one that, we talked about good, bad, or decent females. This one ought to jump into your good category pretty quickly. So we transition to number 2. Good ID on number 2 is she's brown tinge. You kind of see the brown tinge there in her quarter. So that'd be a good ID on her. First thing I noticed about her, she's really high performing. Super tall shouldered and long bodied. Really an extended female that I think super feminine and good looking through her front 1/3. I think she does have some attractive pieces that she brings to the table. She's certainly level up top and square out of her hip, a really level hip female. And I do think, again, performance, being level and balanced really is pretty decent on this particular heifer. I think she does have some look. If we study her in terms of functionality, I think one of her downfalls immediately, you can see she's a little too shallow through her center body, not near the body depth as the heifer that we had in number 1. A little shallow bodied, she might be a little flat-sided. And then certainly if you study her there in terms of her quarter, I think if we got in behind her, I think she'd probably be a little bit narrow and a little closed up. Maybe not have quite the width and dimension is what we're looking for. And from a structural standpoint, she's probably not bad. Not perfect in terms of the set to her rear leg. She maybe wants to get a little crooked legged as she sits them down on her hind two, but certainly acceptable from a structural standpoint. I think, again, a high-performing, pretty good-looking heifer, just maybe not near enough body, near enough substance. She looks kind of narrow and flat. Just from the side in this view, again, be a little better if we could get in behind the cattle. But that's number 2. So then we go to number 3, and again, initial impression is everything on these females, and I think this one probably makes you say wow from the outside. Really attractive through her front 1/3, a super clean-throated, long-necked, smooth-shouldered heifer that's really shallow and tucked up there in terms of her chest. I think she's level over the top side of her skeleton and really square out of her hip. You have to love the balance and the eye appeal that this particular heifer brings to the table, and of the ones that we've seen so far, I definitely think that she probably takes the cake in terms of balance and look from the outside. If we study her for functionality, I think she's plenty good in terms of her center body. I think she's one that looks deep enough and looks bold enough there. And from a structural standpoint, I think her angles are pretty good. She looks pretty good in her angle to her shoulder up front. And while she maybe is a little bit stretched out in terms of her hind leg, it makes her look a touch straighter. I still think that she has the right kind of set to her rear foot. I bet if she got on the move, we'd still be pretty impressed with the way that she went out and motored. So, functionality's covered. She combines it with some of those extra pieces of look and quality. From a power standpoint, maybe it doesn't blow you away there, right? Maybe it doesn't blow you away like the one heifer did in terms of her dimension from behind, dimension to her lower quarter and stifle. Maybe not near as big-footed and stout bone, but certainly adequate in that regard. We wouldn't call her frail, and we wouldn't certainly call her narrow. But maybe that's some things that she could beat. If you want to make her perfect, she could certainly correct herself there. So, number 3, again, really attractive, really good looking. Have to like that heifer a lot. Then we transition down to number 4. Number 4, first thing I noticed, man, really big-bodied. Okay, she's moderate. She looks low input. And when I say low input, she's not looking like she's going to take a whole lot of maintenance to keep that body out in the pasture. Really deep-sided, bold-ribbed. And she's got a lot of power. She looks like she's big pinned. She looks like she's got some lower stifle. She's big-footed. She's stout-boned. So body, stoutness, power, all those bases are covers. And I do think that from a balance standpoint, she has some good pieces as well. She's level over the top side of her skeleton. She's certainly level out of her hip and pin set. And I think she's one that can give you a decent look up front. Now, not as female-like as the 3 heifer, obviously, but I do think she's okay in that regard. One big hickey on this particular female that I think kind of comes to the forefront, and again, I know it's difficult to evaluate pictures, and you don't get to see these cattle on the move, but I think if you can get better at being able to evaluate these cattle's angles, I think you'll see that this heifer's too straight-shouldered. She's a little too straight in her knee. She looks like she maybe wants to toe out there up front a little bit, and so that leads me to believe that her angles are not correct up front. I doubt she would get out and go just real good out of the front side of her skeleton. If we look at her rear leg, she looks a little straight in that regard too. A little too straight-legged, kind of straight in terms of the set to her rear leg. And so structure becomes an issue on this one. And again, we have to remember on breeding animals of any species, structure comes first. And so her being a little too straight-legged, her being a little too straight-fronted, those are both things that kind of is an immediate red flag in my opinion. And so we got to keep that in mind moving forward. But again, just from the outside, a big-bodied, low-input kind that certainly has some power and stoutness. I think she makes this class kind of interesting. So, we come into the bottom pair, or we come into the slide with all 4 of them on here, and I do think we can see, just from a big picture standpoint, it needs to break into pairs. It definitely needs to break into pairs. 1 and 3 need to be in your top pair. And I do believe that 2 and 4 need to be in your bottom pair. And between that top pair, I think it's pretty close. And honestly, it'd be a really fun pair to talk because you have a cowier, broodier female in number 1, and you have one that's a little more elegant, a little more attractive in number 3. 1 brings more power, and body to the table, and 3 brings a little more elegance, a little more look to the table. And so if you think, hey, 3 has enough body and enough substance, you probably go ahead and use her. If you think, hey, I just want to go with the big picture look of 1, she's more powerful, she's broodier, she's cowier, you can go with 1. I think that's a really, really tight pair. I think the middle pair needs to be busted wide open, and I think you come into a bottom pair of females that are really pretty different. I think the later maturing one that's longer spine, a little more extended, is 2, and to me, her angles read a little bit with a little more longevity in terms of her shoulder and her rear leg. I do think she needs more body and more substance, and that's where 4 certainly takes the pair. She is more powerful. She is stouter, certainly bigger and deeper bodied. So I think that's a tight pair again. Certainly differences, and this is a really good class to talk if you just think about all the differences that are available. So we go to the last slide and give you an official. So I official this class 1, 3, 4, 2, and I would cut you 2, 6, and 2. A top-bottom pair class, really high-quality class. Sorts into 2 pairs. I think you have 2 females up top that are just a little higher caliber. You want to go for some extra body and cow power. That's what I like in number 1. I'll use her. In the middle, it's pretty simple. A little more structural integrity, a little sounder female that comes with 3/4. In the bottom pair, I go with the extra power, stoutness, bigger bodied, more moderate female in 4/2. Again, stay tuned. Lots more to come. Hope you guys enjoy this. Have a good time at home during this crazy time that we're in. Thanks.